Story 1. I never wanted to take over my dad's route, but after he died, money got tight and I needed the hours. I live out in a small 2-bedroom duplex on the east side of town where the streetlights barely work, and you hear stray dogs tearing into trash cans every night. Security work wasn't exactly what I planned for my life, but when your rent is late and you're staring at an empty fridge, you put on the uniform and go. It was early March, raining that ugly drizzle that soaks your socks without you realizing. They called me in last minute because some guy called off sick, and I didn't even ask which site until I was halfway out the door, coffee in hand, boots still muddy from the last shift. When they told me the location, my stomach sank a little. My dad used to work that exact post before he got sick. An old distribution center they converted into storage and offices, fenced all around with cheap barbed wire that's mostly there for show. Anyway, I got there around midnight, signed in at the little trailer outside, and did the outside checks first. Nothing weird, just wind rattling the loose aluminum siding and the hum of the transformers down the block. I wasn't even thinking about my dad at first. I was thinking about how I could maybe grab a burger after the shift if I stayed awake enough. Around 2 a.m., I went inside the main building to do my interior walk. The lights in there are motion sensors, so they click on one section at a time, leaving everything else dark behind you. Makes you feel like you're always walking into your own spotlight, with darkness eating at your back. I was halfway down the first floor hall, shining my flashlight under doors and checking padlocks, when I thought I saw someone step around the corner up ahead. I froze. No one else should be there. No cleaning crew. No managers. No one. I didn't even hear the sensors click on for that section, so I thought maybe it was my reflection in the window or just my eyes playing tricks on me. But it wasn't. I could see him standing there at the end of the hall, under one of the flickering lights, wearing a security uniform. But it wasn't the one we wear now. It was blue with a gold badge on the shoulder, the old company patch from years ago, back when my dad was still alive. I felt my mouth go dry, and I took a step forward, trying to see his face, trying to figure out if maybe someone was messing with me. "Hey!" I called out. My voice didn't even echo, just fell flat against the concrete floor. The guy turned slow, like he was underwater, and I could see his face under the buzzing light. It was my dad. Same tired eyes, same way he used to wear his cap too low, same thick mustache, even the same scowl he had when he was focusing on something. He just stood there looking right at me, blinking a few times like he recognized me too. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just stood there, watching him, while the air felt like it thickened around me, heavy and cold. He tilted his head a little, and for a second, his lips moved like he was about to say something, but nothing came out. We just stared at each other. And then he turned and started walking down the hall around the corner like he was doing his rounds. I snapped out of it and started after him, boots echoing hard in the empty hall. I turned the corner. Nobody. Just a dark hall, empty, cold, and that awful buzzing of the light fixtures. I even checked the emergency exit at the end. Still chained shut. Alarm light dead. I don't know how long I stood there, breathing hard, waiting for him to come back around the corner, half expecting him to yell at me for slacking on the job like he used to when I was a kid. But he never did. It was just me, alone, in that dead building. I finished my rounds, but every creak made my skin crawl. Every flicker of light made me jump. I kept looking over my shoulder, hoping to see him again, but also praying I wouldn't. When I signed out that morning, the guy in the trailer asked if I was okay. I guess I looked pretty rough, shaking hands and all. I didn't say anything to him, just left. When I got home, I couldn't sleep. I sat in my living room in my uniform, boots still on, thinking about the way my dad looked at me, like he was seeing me, like he knew it was me. I thought about how it was one of his old posts, how I used to wait up for him to get home, and how he'd complain about that building, about the lights, about how cold it was in the winter. I wondered if maybe he'd never really left that site, or maybe I'd stepped into some moment that wasn't supposed to be for me to see. I've taken that site every chance I get since then, hoping it would happen again. It's been almost 2 years now, and I've done over 20 shifts there, walking the same halls, waiting by that same corner, hoping to see him again, but I haven't. Story 2. I was crashing at my buddy's place in Greeley, Colorado. I wasn't even supposed to be there that night, but my car broke down after a late shift, and they said I could just crash on the couch. They had this old single-story rental with a weird half-finished basement they mostly use for beer pong and bad band practice, and I didn't think twice about it. Nobody told me not to sleep down there. I found an old plaid couch in the corner, near a hanging bulb with one of those pull chains. It was late, maybe past 2 a.m., and everyone else had passed out upstairs or on the floor with half-empty cans around them. I remember texting my sister goodnight, the blue light on my screen the only thing in that dusty dark, before I tossed my phone on my chest and closed my eyes. At first I thought I heard a couple whispering in that walled-off room near the furnace, a girl laughing under her breath, a guy's voice low, like they were telling each other secrets they weren't supposed to say out loud. I cracked an eye open, didn't see anyone, and figured it was just someone from upstairs, sound traveling weird through the vents or the floorboards. But it didn't sound muffled like it would through wood and insulation. It sounded like it was right there, across the basement, in that dark room where nobody ever turned the light on. I sat up a bit, debating if I should get up and tell them to knock it off, but the whispering stopped. Just like that. Dead quiet. "Okay, whatever," I mumbled and laid back down. The light above me was bright, and I didn't want to get up to find the chain, so I just draped my arm across my eyes. I could hear the creaks of the house settling and someone upstairs shifting on the couch, but I was too tired to care. Then something moved across the light. I know what it's like when someone walks past you while you're facing the sun and your eyelids go dark for a second. That's what it was like, except there was no one else down there, and I wasn't asleep enough to be dreaming. I moved my arm away, opened my eyes, and saw nothing but that bare bulb swaying like it had been touched. I sat up fully, blood pounding in my ears, and felt that tight, sinking cold you get when your brain tells you something is wrong. "Hey," I called out, my voice catching. "Who's down here?" Nothing. Then, clear as day, I heard a shuffle across the concrete, like someone in socks dragging their feet. It wasn't me. My feet were on the couch, and I hadn't moved. I held my breath. The sound came again, a slow drag across the floor, closer now, near the bottom of the stairs. I stood up fast, my shoes hitting the ground loud, but the dragging didn't stop. I stepped back, trying to see if maybe someone was messing with me, but the space was empty, just shadows in that swaying bulb. "Bro, not funny," I yelled, voice cracking. It got quiet for a second, the kind of silence that feels too heavy, like it's pressing against your eardrums. Then one slow footstep, like a bare foot on concrete, then another. I backed toward the stairs, watching the space in front of me, and every step I took, there was another soft step behind me that wasn't mine. It wasn't an echo, it was out of sync, like it was matching me but half a second late. I hit the bottom of the stairs, turned, and bolted up them, skipping 2 steps at a time, heart slamming so hard it made me feel dizzy. I stopped at the top, turned around, and just stared into the dark, expecting to see someone coming up behind me. But there was nothing. The bulb downstairs kept swaying, and in the movement, the shadows stretched weird across the concrete floor. I told myself it was just in my head. Maybe I was hearing the old pipes or the refrigerator kicking on. Then I heard it, one single step on the bottom stair. Wood creaking under weight. I don't remember closing the door. I just know I was backing away from it, my hands shaking so bad I could hear my keys rattling in my pocket. "Hey, hey, hey!" I was whispering it to myself, trying to keep my voice down so I didn't wake the entire house. I turned and saw C, my buddy's roommate, passed out on an air mattress in the living room, a hoodie pulled up over her face. I dropped to my knees next to her, shaking her shoulder. C, wake up. Your basement. Something's down there." She pushed the hoodie off her face, blinking at me, hair sticking up. "What?" "Something's down there. I heard it. I saw it. It was following me." She sat up, rubbed her eyes, looked at me like I was the dumbest person alive, and said, "Dude, we told everyone not to sleep down there." I stared at her, trying to process what she just said. "So you know?" I said, my voice shaking. "Yeah, we don't go down there at night. Ever. That was it. She pulled the hoodie back over her head, rolled over, and mumbled, "Move that way, you can crash here." I curled up on the corner of that half-deflated air mattress, knees pulled to my chest, eyes locked on that basement door across the room. Every creak in the house made me flinch. I didn't blink until dawn started leaking through the cheap blinds. And that's it. I never went back to that house again. I don't know what was down there, and I don't care. They can keep it. Story 3. I don't usually share this, but I can't stop replaying what happened that day. We live in a small Kentucky town where everyone knows everyone. I'm a warehouse supervisor, nothing fancy, just regular hours so I can be home with my wife and our 2 kids in the evenings. My wife's parents still live in her childhood home, the same 2-story white house at the end of a dead-end street, the one with the blue shutters that always need repainting. It's the kind of place where every creak of the floorboards sounds louder than it should. The family doesn't talk about what happened there, but everybody in town knows her grandfather was killed in that house, shot, upstairs. I had seen the crime scene photos during the trial when I went to support her family years ago, and they were burned into my memory. Blood pooled by the dresser, the old paisley curtains in the background, his shoes still in the corner. Nobody really goes into that room. It turned into storage for decades, with boxes and old toys stacked around like forgotten centuries. Then for some reason, my father-in-law decided it was time to clear it out and turn it into a grandkid hangout. He put a small TV in there, some beanbags, and told us it would be fun for the cousins to all sleep there during Thanksgiving. We didn't want to make it a big deal, so we didn't say anything. Our oldest, Ryan, was 6 then. He's the type who bounces off the walls, can't sit still for more than 5 minutes, always asking questions about everything. That day we arrived early to help set up, and Ryan asked if he could watch cartoons in the new playroom. I said yes, thinking he'd last 10 minutes before running downstairs. But an hour passed, then 2. The house was unusually quiet. I checked in on him. Ryan was sitting on a beanbag in front of the little TV, watching Tom and Jerry, but his posture was all wrong. Stiff, arms tight to his sides, eyes locked forward. He didn't even turn his head when I opened the door. "Hey, bud," I said, standing in the doorway. "Everything good in here?" "Yeah. You hungry yet?" "No." I walked over, sat on the floor next to him, trying to catch his eye. He didn't look at me. His jaw was tight, his eyes glassy, like he wasn't really seeing the screen. "You okay, buddy?" I asked again, softer. "Daddy," he said, still staring ahead. "Do I have to sleep in here?" I felt this cold slide down my spine. I tried to keep it light. "You don't want to? Why not?" His little voice was flat. "I don't want to sleep in here." I laughed, trying to make it normal. "Well, it's just for fun, buddy. You don't have to if you don't want to." He finally moved, just his eyes shifting to me, and they were wide. "I don't want to because I'm not alone." The way he said it, calm, matter of fact, made my skin crawl. I tried to hide it. "Well, yeah, I'm here with you." "No," he whispered, looking back at the TV. "There is someone in here with us." I didn't know what to say. I glanced around the room. Nothing. Just the boxes pushed against the wall, a lamp, a plastic crate with toys, the small TV on the floor. I thought about those crime scene photos and exactly where the blood had been. "Are they nice or mean?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Is it a kid? A grown-up?" "A grown-up." "What are they doing?" I asked, forcing a small smile. My heart was pounding. "They're watching you." It was dead silent. The cartoon on the TV kept playing, the canned laughter from the show making it feel even more wrong in that room. I swallowed hard. "You've never said anything like this before when you've stayed here, bud," I said, my voice tighter than I meant it to be. He kept staring at the TV. "They don't leave this room," he said, "and I've never been in here before." I didn't want to ask. I really didn't want to know, but I had to. "Where are they now?" Ryan lifted his arm, still not looking away from the TV, and pointed to the far corner of the room. The corner where the dresser had been in the photos, the corner where the blood had spread across the wood floor before they replaced it with new boards that still didn't match the rest of the room. "They're standing over there," Ryan said. "They don't move much." I didn't look. I couldn't. I just scooped him up, feeling how tense his small body was, and said, "Okay, buddy, you don't have to stay in here. We walked out of that room, down the creaking hallway, and back to the living room where the smell of coffee and turkey filled the air. Everyone else was laughing, setting the table, the TV in the living room playing football. Nobody noticed how pale I was or how Ryan clung to me, his face buried in my shoulder. I didn't tell my wife what he said. I didn't say anything at all. We never went back into that room again, and I don't think I ever will. Story 4. I'm not the type of person who believes in ghosts, never have been. But this still keeps me up some nights, and I don't really tell people about it because I don't want them looking at me like I'm crazy. I was 16, living in a small town in upstate New York. Back then I was painfully quiet, the kind of kid who would rather swallow discomfort than ask a single question, even when things felt off. I took a babysitting job for a woman named Erica. She had 2 daughters, one was 9 and the other was 6, and they lived in a half of a beat-up duplex on a dead-end street that was always dark even during the day. I remember that evening because it was freezing, the kind of cold that hurts your teeth when you breathe in. I knocked on the door and Erica answered in her nurse scrubs, looking frazzled but relieved to see me. She was running late for her shift at the hospital, and we didn't have much time to chat, but the girls were already in their pajamas, watching some cartoon in the living room. Erica was going over bedtimes and emergency numbers with me when it happened. The front door swung open, hard enough to rattle the cheap glass, and this little boy, probably 5 or 6, stepped inside wearing a snowsuit that was so puffy he looked like a marshmallow. He didn't look at us, didn't say a word, just stomped past with these heavy snow boots, the kind that squeak when the rubber's cold, and went straight down the stairs to the basement, dragging his mittened hand along the wall as he went. I remember the sound of it, the slow, sticky slide of the mitten against the wall. Erica didn't even pause. She just kept talking about what time she'd be back, and the girls didn't turn their heads or stop giggling at the TV. I thought maybe it was a neighbor's kid, or maybe one of the girls' friends, but I had this tight, hot feeling in my stomach, like when you know you're about to get caught doing something wrong. I almost asked, "Who's that kid?" But I didn't. I didn't say anything. Erica left a few minutes later, and it was just me and the girls. I tried to brush it off, but the longer I sat there, the weirder it felt. You'd think I would have heard the kid come back upstairs, but the house stayed quiet except for the low buzz of the TV. I finally asked, "Hey, who was that kid who came in earlier?" Both of them looked at me like I'd grown another head. "What kid?" the older one asked. "The boy in the snow clothes, the one who went downstairs," I said. They just kept staring. The younger one's eyes started to water a little, and she shook her head. "Nobody came in," she said almost in a whisper. I tried to laugh it off like it was a joke, but they didn't laugh with me, and the older one turned back to the TV, hugging her knees. I sat there, forcing myself to look at the TV too, trying to convince myself it was nothing, but I could feel the silence in the house pressing down, like the air was thicker than it should have been. Every creak of the house settling made me jump. After about 20 minutes, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed a broom, not because I thought it would help, but because I felt stupid going down there empty-handed, and told the girls to stay put. I went to the top of the basement stairs and flipped the light switch. The bulb was dim, buzzing, and barely lit the concrete steps. It smelled like old wet wood down there, and the cold air rushed up to meet me, smelling like dirt and rust. "Hello?" I called down. My voice cracked, which made me feel even stupider. Nothing. I made myself go down the steps, one at a time, the broom held out in front of me like an idiot. I kept telling myself it was just some neighbor kid playing a prank. Maybe he was hiding behind the furnace or the water heater, and I'd find him and it would all be fine. The basement was just one big room, unfinished, with concrete walls and a low ceiling with old pipes that clanked sometimes. There was nowhere to hide. No closets, no back door, no crawl space. I walked around the whole room, moving old boxes with the broom, peering behind the laundry machine. I even looked up, as if he could have somehow climbed into the exposed beams. There was nothing, and there was no wet trail on the floor, no puddles from snow boots. The air felt heavy, like the room was holding its breath, waiting for me to notice something. I stood there listening. Then I heard it. On the wall next to the stairs where the kid had dragged his mitten, there was a faint, wet squeak, like rubber on paint. It moved slowly just once, and then stopped. There was nothing there, but I could hear it, like something was invisible but still pressing against the wall. That was it for me. I bolted up the stairs so fast I almost fell, slammed the basement door shut, and locked it. The girls were sitting on the couch, wide-eyed, clutching each other. I didn't say anything, just sat with them, shaking so hard my teeth hurt from knocking together. We didn't talk much until Erica came home. When she did, I asked her if she had a neighbor kid who sometimes came over. She just looked at me for a second, then shook her head. "No, we don't really know the neighbors," she said, like it was nothing, like she didn't see the way my hands were shaking. I didn't tell her what I saw. I just grabbed my coat and left as fast as I could. The cold outside felt better than the air in that house. I never babysat for them again, and I never went back to that street, even when I had to walk home from school, and it would have been a shortcut. I don't know what I saw. I don't want to know. Story 5. I never thought I'd talk about this, but I guess it's been eating at me for too long. I'm Michael. I grew up in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, in one of those old brick duplexes, the kind with creaky floors and narrow hallways that always smelled like old paint and musty wood. I was around 12 when this happened. One of those hot July afternoons when everything feels slow and the cicadas never shut up outside. My grandparents lived about 20 minutes away, in a house they'd bought in the 70s, just off a quiet road behind a gas station and a diner that smelled like burnt coffee. It was nothing special, but they had a pool in the backyard, so I'd go there a lot in the summer with my mom and sisters. That day, my cousins were already in the pool, and I remember being sweaty and sticky from the car ride, desperate to get in the water. Their downstairs bathroom was tiny, with brown linoleum that curled up at the edges and a rickety door that never locked properly. It had this weird, small, octagon-shaped window high up, maybe 5 feet from the floor, right above the toilet. You couldn't really see much through it except a sliver of the porch roof and the sky, unless someone walked right by. I had my swim trunks bunched around my ankles, pulling off my shirt, when I felt something like static hit the back of my neck. You know that feeling like someone's watching you? It's different when it's real. It's heavy. I glanced up, and at first I thought it was a reflection, like maybe a cloud passing by. But it wasn't a cloud. There was a face in the window, a man's face. His skin looked raw and blackened, like when you overcook something and the edges blister and peel. His hair was patchy, tufts of dark hair clinging to a head that looked melted. His mouth was open wide, but there was no sound, no movement, just that frozen scream, teeth and gums that looked charred and cracked. His eyes were the worst part. They weren't looking around. They were locked on me, like they were begging for something I couldn't give. I couldn't move. I was just stuck there, halfway between pulling up my trunks and reaching for the door, and I didn't even breathe for a second because I thought if I moved, he would move too. But he didn't blink, didn't flinch, just kept staring with that open, twisted mouth. I don't know how long I stood there, but my legs started shaking so bad I had to sit down on the closed toilet lid, pulling my knees to my chest, trying to block the view, but I couldn't help glancing up. He was still there, still screaming, but there was no sound, no breath fogging the glass, just empty, burnt eyes. My mind was scrambling for explanations. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe it was a mask. Maybe it was something reflecting from the yard. But the way he was pressed against the glass, the detail of his burnt skin and that open mouth, the way the light from the porch lamp behind him caught the edges of his hair, it was too real. It was there. I don't know why I didn't scream. I think it's because my voice just died in my throat, and the only thing I could think to do was get out. I pulled up my trunks, didn't even tie them, and bolted out of the bathroom, nearly slipping on the linoleum as I yanked the door open so hard it slammed against the wall. My cousin Ryan was coming down the hallway, holding a pool noodle, looking confused. I almost ran into him and he asked, "What's wrong with you?" I just shook my head and muttered, "Bathroom's gross," and shoved past him. I ran up the stairs to the small bathroom next to the guest bedroom, the one without windows, and locked the door, sitting on the floor until my breathing calmed down. I changed up there and didn't tell anyone what I saw. Not then, not for years. The weirdest part? When I came back downstairs, everyone was acting normal. My grandpa was grilling burgers, my grandma was humming in the kitchen, my sisters were screaming and splashing in the pool. I stood on the porch, glancing up at that small window, and it was empty. Just glass reflecting the blue sky and the top of the porch roof. I thought about checking outside, looking at the yard below the window, but I couldn't make myself do it. Even standing there in the daylight, I felt that heavy static on my neck, like something was still watching me. And I couldn't shake the feeling that if I looked too long, he'd be back, pressing that burnt face against the glass, screaming silently for me to come closer. I used the upstairs bathroom for the rest of that summer, every time we went over, even if it meant waiting while someone else was in there. Nobody ever asked why, and I never explained. I didn't even want to think about it. Eventually, they sold that house, moved into a smaller condo near the city, and the house just became a memory, like all old places do. Story 6. I never liked that basement, but when you're 17 and your dad says it's either there or sharing with your little brother upstairs, you take what you can get. We lived in a plain split level in Ohio. Nothing special. The kind of place where you know every floor creak and pipe groan like your own breath. My room was right at the bottom of the stairs, past the old washer and dryer that smelled like rust and detergent. I had this habit back then, sitting on the edge of my bed scrolling through garbage on my phone until I fell asleep sideways with the blanket barely over me. That bed, man, it creaked like a dying animal anytime you moved. Even if you just shifted your legs a bit, you couldn't get away with sneaking around on it, not even a little. One night in January, cold enough that you could see your breath by the window if the furnace didn't kick in, I was almost out, phone still in my hand, screen lighting up my face. I remember I was watching some dumb clip about a guy slipping on ice, and then I must have nodded off because I woke up to my phone slipping out of my hand and clattering on the floor. I rolled over to grab it, and that's when I heard it. The stairs. Heavy, slow footsteps, one at a time, like someone trying not to be heard, but too heavy to hide it. I thought it was my mom bringing laundry down, so I didn't think much of it at first, just lay there listening to each step as it got closer. But then they stopped at the bottom. No light flicked on, no rustle of laundry baskets, just silence. I lay there on my side, facing the concrete wall, trying to convince myself to turn and look, but something in me said, don't. I don't know if you've ever had that feeling where every part of your body tenses up and even breathing feels like it's too loud. That was me, lying there, the cold air biting at my face, waiting to hear the footsteps again. Then the bed creaked. I didn't move. I swear to God I didn't move. But the springs let out that slow whine like someone had just sat down behind me, dipping the mattress down so slightly that the blanket shifted around my shoulders. I could feel the pressure. I could feel it like a weight right at the middle of the bed, like someone was just sitting there, watching the back of my head. I remember my heart beating so hard I thought it would knock against the bed frame, and I was trying to keep my breathing steady, but it came out all shaky, loud in the silence. I wanted to call out for my dad, but it was like my throat just locked up. I kept telling myself, don't move, don't move, don't move. It felt like hours, but it couldn't have been more than a minute. Then I heard it breathing. It wasn't like normal breathing either. It was this wet, slow drag of air, right by the back of my neck, so close I could feel the air shift, but it was cold. Colder than the air in that room, like a freezer door opening behind me. It breathed in, then out, and there was this tiny noise, like a hum or a low whimper, but it was wrong, like someone trying to copy a human noise, but not getting it right. I don't know what came over me, but I suddenly couldn't take it anymore. I rolled over fast so hard the bed creaked again, and I sat up, looking straight at where the pressure was, and there was nothing. Just the dark room, the furnace humming low, my laundry bag in the corner, and the empty spot on the bed where it felt like someone had been sitting. But here's the part that messed me up. The mattress didn't spring back up when I sat up. It stayed dipped, like something was still there, pressing it down. I stared at that dent in the bed for a long time, waiting for it to rise back up, but it didn't. I even reached out with my hand, hovering over it, and I could feel the cold coming off of it, a cold that made the hairs on my arm stand straight up. I said, "Hello," real quiet, like I was scared it would answer me. Nothing. No breathing, no sound, just that cold spot and the dip in the mattress. I stayed like that, sitting up, shaking, until the dip finally started to rise, slow like it was letting go, and the cold faded. I couldn't make myself move after that. I just sat there, wide awake, until I saw the first light from the window and heard my dad get up to make coffee. I moved out of that room the same day. I told my parents the truth, that I thought I saw a mouse and didn't want to sleep down there anymore, and they didn't even argue. They moved me back upstairs with my brother, and I took it gladly. I never slept in that basement again, not once. Story 7. I never used to think much about ghost stories. You hear them all your life growing up in a small village, and they're usually harmless yarns told by old lads over pints. But there's something about the quiet of a country lane at night that you can't laugh off, no matter how hard you try. I lived in a village in County Clare, just a row of stone houses, a pub, a shop, and fields that crawled right up to the front doors. My grandparents' place was down a narrow boreen outside the village, maybe a 20-minute walk if you kept your head down and didn't stop to check the hedgerows for whatever noise you thought you heard. The night it happened, I wasn't thinking about ghosts. My granddad had taken a turn, and the priest was called in to give him the last rites. The air in the house was tight, everyone's eyes red from holding tears in. My granny clutching granddad's hand like she could keep him here by sheer will. Just before dawn, she told me to go home for a bit and get some rest. Said she'd send word if anything changed. I didn't want to leave, but I couldn't argue with her. I stepped out into the cold air, the dark so heavy it felt like it had weight. I didn't bother with a flashlight. The moon was enough to light the road. It was silent except for the crunch of gravel under my boots and the odd rustle in the ditch. You learn to tune out those noises when you grow up around here. I don't know when I first felt it, but somewhere along that lane, I realized I wasn't alone. It wasn't footsteps or a shape in the dark, nothing like that. It was the hair standing on the back of my neck, the way your gut knows something is wrong before your head catches up. My chest felt tight, and I tried to tell myself it was just the worry about Granddad, the lack of sleep, the cold. Then I saw her. At first, it was just a bit of white down by the gate into the Murphy's field. I thought it was a lamb that had gotten out, so I slowed down, squinting. But as I got closer, the shape didn't move like an animal would. It didn't move at all. It was like the night had bent around it, keeping it still, waiting. I took another step, and that was when it felt like electricity shot up through my feet into my spine. Every hair on my arm standing up, my skin prickling so hard it hurt. I couldn't move. I couldn't even swallow. She was standing there bent over, her long hair covering her face, wearing what looked like a thin, white gown that fluttered even though there was no breeze. I could hear this sound coming from her, like she was crying, but it was wrong. It was too loud, too raw, like an animal in pain. And then she lifted her head. I didn't see a face, not really. Just a blur, like looking through water, but I could feel her eyes on me. That's when she screamed. It was the worst sound I've ever heard in my life. It was like every mother who ever lost a child, every scream of grief and pain and terror, all rolled into one, tearing through the lane and tearing into me. My lungs locked up, and for a second I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. It was like the scream pinned me there. I don't remember deciding to run, but my legs were moving before I knew it, tearing back up the lane toward my granny's house, the scream echoing behind me, filling the night. I didn't look back. I couldn't. When I burst through the front door, I could hear my granny sobbing, the sound rolling down the hallway from Granddad's room. I stood there gasping, sweat cold on my skin, and I knew. I didn't need to ask. My granny came out of the room, tears running down her face, and she just said, "He's gone." I remember sitting down on the cold tiles in the hallway, my back against the wall, trying to get my breath back, the scream still ringing in my ears like it was stuck in there forever. I told them about the woman on the lane, the scream, the white gown, the way it felt like death itself had passed me by. I thought they'd laugh or tell me it was shock, or maybe that I'd fallen asleep and dreamed it. But they didn't laugh. My elderly aunt just nodded, her hands shaking as she lit a cigarette, and said, "She's been with this family a long time." Like it was nothing, like it was just the weather. I remember looking at my father, expecting him to scoff or tell me to stop the nonsense. But he just looked down at his boots and wouldn't meet my eye. My father, who never missed Mass, who always told us not to talk about superstitions, just stood there silent. That was the first and last time I saw her. People call her the banshee around here, but until you hear that scream for yourself, it's just another ghost story. You think you'll be brave, or that you'll pray, or that you'll do something, anything if you ever saw something like that. You won't. You'll stand there, frozen, while the night opens up and lets something ancient crawl through. And all you can do is pray that when it's done screaming, it leaves you alone. It's not like in the stories. There's no mystery about it. No, maybe it was the wind. You know what you saw. You know what you heard. Story 8. I was 17 when it happened, living with my dad in a small place up in the Siskiyou foothills, Oregon side. It wasn't really a house, more like an old single-wide trailer someone parked under a makeshift roof, surrounded by tall pines and that constant cold dampness you get in the woods. I was used to the sounds out there. Coyotes, owls, branches knocking against the siding. I wasn't scared of being alone, not really, but there was something about that night that I still can't explain. It was around 1 in the morning, I think. I know because I was still up, playing games on my cheap laptop, earbuds in, trying not to wake Dad. Power went out suddenly, killed the screen, and left me staring at my own reflection. I pulled the buds out, and it was dead quiet, which made me realize how much I relied on noise to keep my mind calm out there. I got up, feeling around for the flashlight. That's when I noticed it, this faint tapping on the front door. Not a knock, more like the sound of fingernails against the metal. Slow, steady, just once every couple of seconds. I thought maybe it was the wind pushing a branch, but it was too steady. I whispered, "Dad?" Like an idiot, but of course he was asleep in the back room. I don't know what made me do it, but I stepped over to the door, holding my breath, and looked out through the narrow crack in the blinds. The moon was bright enough to light up the dirt driveway, and I saw him. He was standing maybe 15 feet from the steps. He was tall but thin, wearing what looked like an old miner's coat, the edges ragged and dirty, and on his head was one of those old-style lamps, except it wasn't on, just a black shape sticking out from the hatband. He was just standing there staring dead at the trailer, not moving at all, like he'd been there for hours. I remember thinking, maybe it's just some drunk, maybe it's a neighbor, but no one lived within a mile of us, and you don't just wander around out here without a flashlight or yelling out to let people know you're around. He lifted one hand and it looked like he was trying to wave, but it was this weird, jerky half wave, like his arm wasn't working right. Then his hand dropped and he just kept staring. I backed away from the window and I could feel my pulse in my teeth, like every part of me was screaming to run. But where was I going to run to in the middle of the woods? I tried to wake Dad up, shaking his shoulder, whispering, "There's someone outside." He mumbled something, half asleep, and rolled over. When I went back to check, the man was closer, standing right at the bottom of the steps, head tilted like he was trying to see through the window. I could see his face better then, and it was wrong somehow, like it was too pale, and his eyes looked cloudy, like they didn't really see anything at all. I stood there frozen, whispering, "Please go away," over and over under my breath. I don't know why I didn't call the cops. Maybe because I knew they'd take an hour to get there. Maybe because I didn't want to look away from him. And then he smiled. It was small, but enough to see his lips crack like they hadn't moved in a long time. And then he lifted his hand again and pointed right at me. He didn't say anything, just stood there, pointing and smiling. Then the power came back on. The hallway light buzzed and the hum of the fridge clicked back. I jumped so hard I almost fell. I looked back out the window and he was gone. Just like that. No sound, no footsteps on the gravel, nothing. I opened the door, half expecting him to be standing right there. But the steps were empty, the driveway empty, the trees quiet. I walked out onto the gravel with a flashlight, sweeping it around, shaking so hard I almost dropped it. Nothing. No footprints, no sign anyone had been there at all. I didn't sleep the rest of the night, just sat on the couch with the lights on, listening to every little sound outside. I told Dad in the morning, and he just nodded, said, "Probably some meth head," but he wouldn't look at me when he said it. A couple days later, I told our neighbor, an old logger who'd lived up there his whole life, about what I saw. He got real quiet, and then he just said, "Yeah, people see him sometimes," and wouldn't say anything else, just change the subject. I've tried to find a reason for it. I really have. Maybe it was someone messing with us. Maybe I was half asleep. Maybe it was a trick of the moonlight. But I can still see his face, the way he pointed, the way his lips cracked when he smiled. It only happened that one night, but it's enough that I still keep the blinds shut at night, no matter where I live. Story 9, and I never liked that apartment, but rent was cheap, and I needed somewhere close to the shop where I worked. It was a one-bedroom on the top floor of a 3-story brick building in Jersey City, the kind of place where the hallway lights flicker and you can smell everyone's dinner through the walls. I'm 6 feet 3 inches and the ceilings were low, so I always felt cramped. I don't think that helped with how uneasy I felt there, especially at night. It was a Thursday, and I just finished a late shift. I remember because I was microwaving leftover pizza and watching some stupid late-night show on my laptop, trying to unwind. The radiator hissed like it always did, and the windows rattled a bit whenever a truck rolled by outside. Nothing new, nothing scary, just a normal night. I was laying on my stomach on the bed, scrolling on my phone. My feet were hanging off the edge just a bit, because the mattress was too small for me. I had socks on, but the apartment was cold, so I was trying to keep my feet under the blanket while still staying comfortable. I wasn't thinking about anything deep, just mindless scrolling, maybe a video playing quietly in the background. Then it happened. I felt something grab my right foot, not a brush, not a tickle, but a full-on squeeze. Firm, cold fingers, like someone's hand wrapped around the ball of my foot, pressing down enough that it actually hurt for a split second. I jerked up so fast that my phone flew off the bed and hit the floor. My heart was hammering, and I twisted around, trying to see if maybe I'd kicked something under the bed or if the blanket had bunched weirdly. But there was nothing there, just the gray sheet hanging slightly over the edge and empty air below. I sat there frozen, breathing hard. I didn't want to believe it, so I told myself maybe the blanket had slid and tightened weirdly around my foot. But deep down, I knew it was a hand. You know the difference when someone grabs you, and that's exactly what it felt like. I remember saying out loud, "What the hell was that?" My voice sounded small in the room. The radiator hissed again, and the window rattled, like the building was mocking me. I pulled my feet up, sitting cross-legged in the middle of the bed, staring at the edge where my foot had been. I waited, expecting it to happen again, but nothing did. I wish that was it, but it got worse. As I was sitting there trying to calm myself down, I felt the mattress dip at the foot of the bed, like someone heavy had just climbed on. I could see the blanket pulling tight in that spot, sinking down as if a knee was pressing into it. I didn't hear anything, but I swear the air in the room got heavier, thicker, and cold enough that I could see my breath. I whispered, "No, no, no," because I didn't know what else to do. My phone was still on the floor, screen cracked, the light flickering where it lay face up. I didn't want to look away from the foot of the bed, but I forced myself to lean over and grab my phone, never taking my eyes off the spot where the mattress was sinking. Then the blanket started to pull, like it was being dragged off me slowly. It moved in these small, deliberate jerks, not like it was sliding off by accident. I was shaking so bad that my teeth were clacking together. I tried to hold on to the blanket, but it kept tugging, pulling harder until it slipped from my grip and slid down to the floor. I couldn't move. I just sat there staring at the empty space, waiting for something else to happen. I remember thinking, if I see a hand, I'm going to lose it. I was so scared I thought I was going to throw up. And then it let go. The mattress sprang back up and the air felt lighter, warmer, like whatever was there had just left. I sat there in the middle of the bed, still shaking, clutching my phone to my chest, listening to the radiator hiss and the fridge hum from the kitchenette. I don't know how long I sat there, but at some point I got up, grabbed my keys and left. I went and sat in my car in the parking lot downstairs, engine off, just breathing, trying to stop shaking. I couldn't go back inside that night. I ended up sleeping in the car, curled up in the driver's seat, using my work jacket as a blanket. I moved out of that place 2 weeks later. I told the landlord it was because of the leaks and the noise, but the truth is I was terrified it would happen again. I still don't know what grabbed my foot or what climbed on the bed that night. I never saw anything, but I felt it. It was real. The cold, the weight, the way it pulled the blanket away from me. I can't explain it, and I don't try to anymore. I don't tell people this story often because I know how it sounds, but I know what I felt, and I know that I'm never letting my feet hang off the edge of the bed again. Story 10. I moved into that duplex on 7th Street because it was cheap, and I didn't have many options being 7 months pregnant and single. The landlord, an old guy who smelled like cigarettes and Vicks, said, "Place is quiet," which I thought was funny because the first night I could hear everything, the creaks of the house settling, the pipes knocking, cars out front. It wasn't until maybe the 5th night that I noticed the scratching. At first I thought it was mice. I've heard mice before. I grew up in an old house, and the way they scuttle in the walls is light and frantic, almost skittish. This was different. I'd be lying in bed and it would start right above my head, slow, deliberate, like something was dragging its nails across the wood under the drywall. It would pause, and then I'd hear it shift, moving upward inch by inch, up to the ceiling. It would stop for a long while, and I would hold my breath, waiting to see if it would start again. And it always did, moving down the other wall on the opposite side of my bed. It did this every night. I was too exhausted to care most of the time, my body heavy and sore, my legs swelling, and I would just force myself to sleep. One night, around 1:30 in the morning, I was half awake, trying to get comfortable. The scratching started like usual, just above my head. I opened my eyes and stared at the glow of the streetlights coming through the curtains, waiting. It moved up, slow and steady, and I felt my stomach tighten, my baby shift inside me. I remember whispering, "Not tonight, please." It reached the ceiling, and I could hear it pause. Then nothing. I turned to my side, pulling my blanket tighter, telling myself it was just a raccoon or something stuck in the crawl space. That's when I felt it. Something landed on top of my legs. The pressure was heavy enough that my knees dipped under the weight, and for a split second, I thought maybe a cat had gotten in somehow. But it wasn't moving. It just sat there, pressing down on me. I couldn't see it, but I could feel it through the blanket, something cold and heavy. I froze, too afraid to move, staring into the dark. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I whispered, "Hello?" because that's all I could think to say. There was no sound, no movement, but the weight didn't lift. I tried to pull my legs up, but it pressed down harder, like it was trying to pin me. I felt something shift on top of me, like a hand bracing itself, and I swear to God I heard breathing, slow and raspy, like someone with a bad cold. I screamed. It was like it snapped the room out of whatever the hell was happening, and the weight lifted so fast my legs bounced. I scrambled up, flipping the light switch, gasping, my heart racing so hard I thought I would pass out. There was nothing there. The blanket was still in place, the room empty, quiet except for my own ragged breathing. I checked under the bed, in the closet, behind the door. I even pulled back the curtains to check if someone had come in through the window, but it was locked and the street outside was empty. I didn't go back to that bed. I grabbed a pillow and a blanket, went down to the couch, and sat there with every light on until the sun came up, shaking, hugging my belly, whispering to my baby that everything was okay, even though it wasn't. The landlord came the next day because I called him, telling him there was something in the walls, something that landed on me, and I couldn't stay there if it kept happening. He looked at me like I was crazy, rubbed his chin and said, "I've had this place 30 years, never had a complaint like that." I didn't know what else to do. I had nowhere else to go. I moved my bed to the living room after that, slept with the TV on low just for the sound, and I didn't sleep much. But that scratching never came back, not once. Sometimes, even now, when I'm rocking my baby to sleep, I think about that night, about how it felt when that thing pressed down on me, how it was cold, how it felt like hands bracing against my legs. I think about how it didn't move, how it just sat there, and I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't screamed. People love to say it was just sleep paralysis, or stress, or my imagination, but I was awake. I was awake, and it was there, and it felt real. That's the part that keeps me up sometimes, because it only happened once and it never came back.